Her millionaire CEO husband secretly married another woman. She attended the wedding. What she did left everyone in shock. 400 guests. An oceanfront garden draped in white roses. A bride in French lace worth more than most people's houses. And at the altar, a man who was about to marry the love of his life. There was just one problem. His wife was sitting in the back row. The officiant's voice carried across the garden like a death sentence. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be lawfully married, speak now or forever hold your peace. The pause stretched out. Someone coughed. A few guests exchanged amused glances. This was always just a formality. No one ever actually objected. And then a woman in burgundy stood up. Every head in that garden turned toward the back row. 400 pairs of eyes fixed on the woman who had just shattered the silence. The groom's face went white. The bride's expression shifted from confusion to recognition to pure, undiluted fury. And then the woman spoke. "I object, on the grounds that the groom is already legally married." The gasps were immediate. Hands flew to mouths. Whispers erupted like wildfire. To me, the groom stumbled backward as if he'd been physically struck. His voice cracked when he finally found it. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" Vivian Ashford began walking slowly up the aisle, her burgundy dress cutting through the sea of white like a bloodstain. Her amber eyes never left her husband's face. "What am I doing here, Julian?" "I'm attending my husband's wedding." "Isn't that what wives do?" The bride screamed. "This is insane." "Julian, who is this woman?" Julian Mercer, CEO of a billion-dollar pharmaceutical empire, the man who had charmed his way through high society for a decade, suddenly looked like a cornered animal. "Celeste, I can explain." "Explain what?" Vivian's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "That you've been married to me for 3 years. That the divorce papers you filed were never signed. That this wedding cannot legally proceed because you are still my husband." The crowd erupted. But here's the thing. The wedding crash wasn't even the most shocking part of this story. Because Vivian didn't just expose a secret marriage that day. She exposed a conspiracy that would send her husband to prison, destroy his billion-dollar empire, and change everything. Have you ever been betrayed by the person you trusted most in the world? Have you ever discovered that your entire life was built on lies? Have you ever had the chance to look your betrayer in the eye and watch their world crumble the way they crumbled yours? This is that story. But before I tell you what happened at that wedding, and trust me, it gets so much more explosive than what I just showed you, I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to when Vivian Ashford fell in love with the man who would try to destroy her. Because the best revenge stories always start with love. And this love story was beautiful. Until it wasn't. If you believe that betrayal should never go unanswered, hit that like button right now and let me know in the comments what you would have done in Vivian's position. Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have shown up at that wedding, ready to burn it all down? Let's begin. 5 years before the wedding crash, Vivian Ashford was 26 years old and already exhausted from trying to prove she belonged in rooms full of people who had never had to prove anything. She was the daughter of an accountant from Providence, Rhode Island. Her mother was a nurse who worked double shifts so Vivian could have piano lessons. Her father was the kind of man who believed that hard work could overcome any disadvantage, and he'd passed that belief on to his daughter like an inheritance more valuable than money. Vivian had clawed her way to a scholarship at Columbia Business School through sheer determination. Straight A's in high school, perfect SAT scores, recommendation letters that made admissions officers actually pay attention. She had earned every single opportunity she'd ever received, and she was proud of that. But standing in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel at an alumni networking event, surrounded by people who had never known a day of financial worry in their lives, she felt like an imposter. The champagne in her hand cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The dress she was wearing was a knockoff of a designer gown she'd found at a consignment shop, and every conversation she overheard seemed to revolve around summer homes and trust funds and connections that had been built over generations. She was about to leave when she noticed him. Julian Mercer was standing by the bar, and he looked just as uncomfortable as she felt, which was strange because according to the whispered conversations happening around her, he was one of the most powerful men in the room. CEO of Mercer Pharmaceuticals at 32, net worth in the billions, the kind of man who should have been working the room like he owned it. Instead, he was nursing a glass of scotch and watching the crowd with the expression of someone counting down the minutes until he could escape. Their eyes met across the room, and something shifted. He walked toward her with the kind of confident stride that comes from knowing exactly who you are. But his smile when he reached her was surprisingly warm, surprisingly genuine. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. Vivian laughed before she could stop herself. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's feeling the same way." He extended his hand. "Julian Mercer. Vivian Ashford." She shook his hand, noting the firmness of his grip, the way his gray eyes seemed to actually see her rather than look through her. "So, Vivian Ashford," he said, leaning against the bar beside her. "What brings you to this particular circle of hell?" "Networking." She gestured at the crowd. "Supposedly, these events are essential for career advancement. Are they working for you? Not even a little. Everyone here seems to speak a language I never learned. Summer in the Hamptons, winter in Aspen, Daddy's investment firm." Julian's laugh was unexpected, a genuine sound that made several nearby heads turn. "You're refreshing," he said. "Do you know that? Everyone in this room wants something from me. The connections, the money, the name. You're the first person tonight who's actually asked me a real question." "I didn't ask you a question." "Exactly. You didn't ask me what I do. You didn't ask about the company. You didn't try to pitch me your startup or your cousin's investment opportunity. You just treated me like a regular person." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Should I not have?" "No, you definitely should have. It's just rare." He took a sip of his scotch, studying her over the rim of the glass. "Tell me something about yourself, Vivian. Something that has nothing to do with business school or career ambitions." She thought for a moment. "I can play 3 Chopin nocturnes from memory. I learned on a second-hand piano my parents saved for 2 years to buy. And every time I play them, I think about my mother working night shifts so I could have lessons." Julian was quiet for a long moment. "That might be the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me at one of these events. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how low." They talked for 3 hours that night. Not about business or networking or the transactional conversations that filled every other corner of the room. They talked about music and books and the pressure of family expectations. They talked about loneliness, the particular kind that comes from being surrounded by people who only see your surface. When the event ended, Julian walked her to the door. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "Not for business, just because I want to." Vivian had been warned about men like Julian Mercer. Rich men, powerful men. Men who used charm like a weapon and discarded women when they got bored. But there was something in his eyes that made her believe he was different. "I'd like that too," she said. Their courtship was everything she'd never allowed herself to dream of. Julian sent her flowers the morning after their first date with a note that simply said thank you for being real. He took her to rooftop restaurants where the entire city sparkled beneath them. He surprised her with spontaneous trips to Paris just because she mentioned she'd never been. But it wasn't the expensive gestures that made her fall in love. It was the quiet moments. It was the night they stayed up until 3 in the morning on his penthouse balcony, talking about their childhoods. Julian told her things he said he'd never told anyone, about his father's impossible expectations, about his grandmother's controlling nature, about the loneliness of being the heir to an empire that had been planned for him before he was born. "I've never felt like I had a choice," he admitted, his voice soft in the darkness. "About who I would become, about what my life would look like. It was all decided before I took my first breath." "But you could walk away," Vivian said. "You could build your own life." "Could I?" His laugh was bitter. "You don't know my family. You don't know what they're capable of when they don't get what they want. What do you want, Julian?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Right now, I just want this. Someone who sees me, really sees me. Not the money or the name or what I can do for them. Just me." Vivian reached for his hand. "I see you." And she meant it. She saw the man behind the CEO mask, the vulnerable boy inside the powerful exterior, the person who was desperate to be loved for himself rather than his accomplishments. The proposal came on the anniversary of their first meeting, at the same bar in the Plaza Hotel where they'd first locked eyes. Julian had arranged for the entire room to be emptied, just the two of them, surrounded by candlelight and roses. He dropped to one knee with a ring that probably cost more than her parents' house, but his eyes were what captured her attention. Nervous, hopeful, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Vivian," he said, "I've spent my whole life being what everyone else needed me to be. With you, I can finally just be myself. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The wedding was elegant but intimate. Julian's preference, he said. He wanted their day to be about them, not about society performances. Vivian was touched by the sentiment, though she noticed that very few of Julian's family members attended. His parents came but seemed distant, polite but cold. His grandmother, Eleanor Mercer, the matriarch who controlled the family fortune, was notably absent. She was too ill to travel, Julian explained. But she sends her best wishes. Vivian accepted the explanation. She had no reason not to. On their wedding night, Julian held her close in their suite at a Tuscan villa, moonlight spilling through the windows. "You're the first real thing in my life," he whispered against her hair. "Everyone else wants something from me. But you just love me." "I do," she said. "I always will." And for a while, that was true. The first year of marriage was a dream Vivian kept expecting to wake from. They traveled the world together. Charity galas in Monaco, opera in Vienna, quiet weekends at a villa in the south of France that had been in the Mercer family for generations. Julian showered her with gifts that ranged from extravagant to intimate. A Cartier bracelet for their 1-month anniversary, a handwritten love letter she found tucked into her briefcase before an important exam, a first edition of her favorite novel that he'd tracked down at a rare book auction in London. "I want to give you everything," he would say, and she believed him. But she also noticed things, small things that didn't quite add up. Julian's family continued to keep their distance. His mother called occasionally, conversations that seemed more like check-ins than genuine connection. His father sent formal birthday cards signed in his secretary's handwriting. And Eleanor Mercer remained a mysterious figure, supposedly too frail for visits, but somehow well enough to manage the family's vast financial empire from afar. "They don't approve of me, do they?" Vivian asked one evening after another stilted dinner with Julian's parents. "It's not about you," Julian assured her. "They're like this with everyone. Old money families have strange ideas about how relationships should work, but it felt like it was about her. The way Julian's mother looked at her with barely concealed disappointment, the way his father asked pointed questions about her family background as if he were conducting a job interview, the way every conversation seemed to circle back to lineage and legacy and producing heirs. "When are you planning to start a family?" his mother asked at one particularly uncomfortable brunch. "Julian's not getting any younger, you know." "We're taking our time," Vivian said, squeezing Julian's hand under the table. "We want to enjoy being newlyweds first. Don't take too long." His mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The Mercer legacy won't continue itself." Vivian pushed down her discomfort. Every family had its quirks. Julian loved her. That was what mattered. The problems started so subtly she almost missed them. Business trips that stretched from 3 days to 10. Julian would call every night at first, but gradually the calls became shorter, more distracted. He'd sound tired, apologize for not being present, promise to make it up to her when he returned. "Is everything okay at work?" Vivian asked during one of these calls. "Just some complications with a product launch. Nothing I can't handle." "How are you?" "I'm fine. I miss you." "I miss you too." A pause. "I have to go. Meeting in 5 minutes." He hung up before she could say goodbye. Phone calls that he'd taken in another room became more frequent. Vivian would walk in to find him quickly ending conversations, smiling too brightly, changing the subject with practiced ease. "Who was that?" she'd ask. "Just the office. Nothing important." She wanted to believe him. So she did. When Vivian discovered she was pregnant, she expected joy. She'd imagined this moment so many times, running to tell Julian, watching his face light up, planning their future together. The reality was different. "Julian, I have something to tell you." She held out the positive pregnancy test, her hands trembling with excitement. He stared at the test for a long moment. His face went through several expressions she couldn't quite read. Finally, he looked up at her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's wonderful news," he said. No hug, no tears of joy, no lifting her off her feet and spinning her around the way he had the day she'd agreed to marry him. Just that flat, controlled response, like she'd told him about a moderately successful quarterly report rather than the child they'd created together. "You seem surprised," Vivian said carefully. "I am. We weren't really planning for this yet, were we? Sometimes the best things aren't planned." "Of course. You're right." He pulled her into a hug that felt mechanical, obligatory. "This is wonderful." But his hands were stiff on her back, and when he pulled away, She caught something in his eyes that looked almost like panic. She told herself he was just stressed, just processing. He'd come around once the reality set in. Weeks passed, and he didn't come around. If anything, he became more distant. More business trips, more late nights at the office, more conversations that ended abruptly when she entered the room. The Monaco Gala happened 8 months before the wedding invitation arrived. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway. Julien had promised to take a few days off after the charity event, show her the French Riviera, reconnect after weeks of missed dinners and canceled plans. Instead, he spent the entire evening distracted. Vivienne watched him from across the ballroom, surrounded by women in designer gowns and men in custom tuxedos. Julien was talking to someone she didn't recognize, a woman with champagne blonde hair and a laugh like crystal bells. She was beautiful in that effortless way that spoke of unlimited budgets and expert styling. But it wasn't her beauty that made Vivienne's stomach clench. It was the way Julien was looking at her. She had seen that look before. In the early days of their relationship, that look had been directed at her. "Who is that?" she asked when Julien finally returned to her side. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Celeste Fontaine, an old family friend. Our families have known each other for decades. She seems very friendly with you. We grew up together." "What are you implying?" "Nothing." Vivienne forced a smile. Just making conversation, but she couldn't unsee what she'd seen. The lingering touches, the private smiles, the way Julien's entire demeanor changed in Celeste's presence. He was lighter with her, more natural, more like the man Vivienne had fallen in love with. Later that night, in their hotel suite, she tried again. "Julien, is there something you want to tell me about Celeste?" He was removing his cufflinks with precise, controlled movements. "Like what? You seemed very close tonight. We've known each other since we were children. Of course we're close. Close like friends. Or close like something else." He turned to face her, and for just a moment, she saw something flash in his eyes. Something that looked like guilt. But it was gone before she could be sure. "You're being paranoid, Vivienne. It's unbecoming. Celeste is engaged to someone else, if you must know. She's no threat to you." "I didn't say she was a threat." "Then why are we having this conversation? Because you barely looked at me all night. Because you've been distant for months. Because I'm pregnant with your child, and I feel like I'm losing you." Julien's expression softened slightly. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "I'm sorry," he said. "Work has been overwhelming, but I'm here now. I'm with you. There's nothing between me and Celeste, except childhood memories. I promise you." He kissed her forehead, then her lips. Then he led her to the bed and made love to her with the same intensity as their early days together. But afterward, when he thought she was asleep, she heard him get up. She heard him walk to the balcony and make a phone call, speaking in low tones she couldn't quite make out. She wanted to believe his promises. So she convinced herself she did, but the doubt had taken root. And doubt, once planted, has a way of growing. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. Vivienne was 4 months pregnant, though you couldn't tell by looking at her. She was sitting in the penthouse apartment that had never quite felt like home, surrounded by expensive furniture and priceless artwork that Julien had chosen without consulting her. She was making a list of nursery ideas, imagining the life that was growing inside her, trying to feel hopeful about the future. The mail came through the slot in the door. Bills, magazines, a few charity invitations, and one envelope that stood out from the rest. Cream-colored cardstock, heavy, expensive paper, gold embossing that caught the light. She assumed it was for another society event. Julien received dozens of these every month. She almost set it aside unopened. Something made her open it anyway. The words blurred together at first. Her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. "Mr. and Mrs. Laurent Fontaine cordially invite you to celebrate the marriage of their daughter, Celeste Elaine, to Julien Marcus Mercer." She read it again, and again, and again. The room started spinning. She gripped the edge of the kitchen counter to keep from falling. This couldn't be real. There had to be some mistake. A cruel prank. A misprint. Something. Anything other than what this invitation seemed to be saying. Her husband was marrying another woman. In 2 weeks, she called Julien's office. He was in a meeting. She called his cell phone. Straight to voicemail. She sat in the kitchen as the afternoon light shifted and faded, staring at the invitation in her hands, trying to make sense of a world that had just revealed itself as a lie. Every memory played back through a new lens. The business trips that stretched on too long, the phone calls taken in other rooms, the distance in his eyes even when he was standing right beside her, the strange muted reaction to her pregnancy, and Monaco, Celeste Fontaine with her crystal bell laugh and her easy intimacy with Julian, an old family friend. We've known each other for decades. He hadn't been lying about knowing her. He'd just been lying about everything else. By the time Julian came home that evening, Vivian had passed through several stages of grief and arrived at something that felt almost like calm, the kind of calm that comes after a devastating blow when the body goes into shock to protect itself from pain too enormous to process. Julian walked through the door, looking tired but composed. He set down his briefcase, loosened his tie. "How was your day?" he asked, not looking at her. Vivian set the invitation on the coffee table. "Interesting." Julian froze. His eyes locked onto the cream-colored cardstock. For just a moment his mask slipped, and she saw pure panic in his expression. "Where did you get that? It was delivered here. By mistake, I assume, since I'm apparently not supposed to know that my husband is getting married." "Vivian, I can explain." "Explain what, Julian?" "That you've been having an affair, that you're engaged to someone else, that our entire marriage has been a lie." He moved toward her, hands raised as if approaching a wild animal. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is. Tell me there's some explanation that makes this okay." He stopped. She watched the wheels turning in his mind, watched him calculate and recalculate, trying to find the angle that would work, the excuse that would make her doubt what she'd seen with her own eyes. But there was no angle, no excuse. The evidence was lying on the coffee table between them. "How long?" she asked. Julian's shoulders sagged. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once. 2 years. 2 years. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "We've been married for 3 years. I know. So, you were seeing her before we got married?" "Yes." "And during our marriage?" "Yes." "And now you're engaged to her?" "Yes." The monosyllabic answers were somehow worse than elaborate lies would have been. He wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. "Why?" Vivian asked. "Just tell me why." Julian moved to the bar cart in the corner and poured himself a scotch. His hands were steady, like this was just another business problem to be managed. "My grandmother's will," he said finally. "The majority of my inheritance is tied up until I've been married for 3 years. The wedding we had, the life we've been living, it was always supposed to be temporary." Temporary. Celeste's family wouldn't agree to a marriage without a proper engagement period. Society protocols and all that. But I needed to be married for 3 years to access the trust. So I needed someone else first. You needed a placeholder. I needed a solution. You were. He paused, searching for the word. Convenient. The word hit Vivian like a physical blow. She actually felt her body sway from the impact of it. Convenient, she repeated. You were smart, beautiful, from a respectable enough background. You didn't have the connections to cause problems if things ended badly. And you genuinely loved me, which made everything easier. You used me. I provided for you. I gave you a lifestyle most people can only dream of. I didn't want a lifestyle, Julian. I wanted a marriage. I wanted a partner. I wanted someone who loved me back. Love. Julian's laugh was cold. Love is a fantasy, Vivian. Successful families are built on strategy, on compatibility, on producing heirs who can continue the legacy. Is that what Celeste provides? Strategic compatibility. Celeste understands how this world works. She was raised in it. She knows what's expected, and she's prepared to deliver. Her mother had 5 children with no complications. She comes from strong genetic stock. You're talking about her like she's a racehorse. I'm talking about her like she's the appropriate choice for the position she's filling. And what am I, Julian? What position do I fill? He took a long sip of his scotch before meeting her eyes. You were a means to an end. A pleasant one, but temporary by design. The wedding is in 2 weeks. After that, I'll file for divorce. You'll be compensated generously. The prenup was fair. The prenup. She had signed it 3 years ago, trusting that she would never need to think about it. Trusting that this man loved her as much as she loved him. I'm pregnant, she said quietly. With your child. For the first time, something flickered in Julian's expression, something that almost looked like regret. but it was gone quickly, replaced by that cold, calculating mask. "That complicates things," he admitted, "but not as much as you might think. The child will be provided for financially. I'll set up a trust. You'll both be well taken care of. You think I care about money? Everyone cares about money, Vivian. Some people just pretend they don't." She stared at this stranger who wore her husband's face, the man who had held her on their wedding night and whispered that she was the first real thing in his life, the man who had looked into her eyes and promised to love her forever. That man had never existed. He had been a performance, a role Julian played until he didn't need to play it anymore. "Get out," she said. "Vivian, get out." Her voice rose, echoing through the penthouse. "Get out of this apartment. Get out of my sight. And don't you dare try to touch me or comfort me or pretend you have any decency left." Julian set down his glass, straightened his tie. Even now, even in this moment of complete destruction, he was composed, controlled, like none of this was touching him at all. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours tomorrow," he said. "I'll be generous in the settlement. I don't want this to be ugly. You made it ugly when you decided to treat me like a rental car." He moved toward the door, then paused. Something in his expression shifted. For just a moment, he looked almost human. "You're a good woman, Vivian. You deserve someone who can appreciate what you have to offer." "And what exactly do I have to offer, in your expert opinion?" "Beauty, intelligence, kindness." He turned back to face her, just not the right pedigree. "Get out of my apartment. It's my apartment. Then I'll leave. The lawyers will handle the details. You can stay until the paperwork is finalized." He walked out the door without looking back. His footsteps echoed in the hallway until the elevator swallowed him up. Vivian stood alone in the penthouse that had never been hers, surrounded by beautiful things she had never chosen, carrying a child whose father had just dismissed her like a failed employee. She should have collapsed. She should have cried. She should have let the devastation wash over her. Instead, she felt something else rising inside her, something hot and sharp and dangerous. He thought she was convenient. He thought she would take the settlement and disappear quietly into the life of a discarded first wife. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The next 2 weeks were the most focused of Vivian's life. She didn't cry. She didn't wallow. She didn't spend hours staring at old photographs or replaying happy memories that had all been lies. Instead, she worked. The first thing she did was not sign the divorce papers. Julian's lawyer sent them over the day after their confrontation, filled with generous provisions and carefully worded clauses. She read every page twice, then set them aside without touching a pen. Let him think she was broken and compliant. Let him assume she would do what he expected. The second thing she did was hire a private investigator. "I need everything," she told the woman across from her, a former FBI agent who now ran a boutique investigation firm that catered to scorned spouses and suspicious business partners. Everything about his relationship with Celeste Fontaine. Everything about his business practices. Everything about the life he's been hiding from me. "That's a broad mandate," the investigator said. "It won't be cheap. Money isn't an issue. Julian is about to give me a very generous settlement." The results came back within a week, and they were worse than Vivian had imagined. Julian and Celeste had been together for over 2 years. There were photographs of them at private events, hotel receipts, records of gifts purchased, vacations taken. The affair had started before Julian even proposed to Vivian. But the personal betrayal was only the beginning. "My team found something else," the investigator said, sliding a folder across the table. "This goes beyond infidelity." Vivian opened the folder and began to read. Mercer Pharmaceuticals' flagship medication was a blood pressure drug that generated over $2 billion in annual revenue. It was prescribed to millions of patients worldwide, marketed as safe and effective for long-term use. Except it wasn't safe. Internal documents showed that the company had known for over a year that the drug was causing strokes in a small but significant percentage of patients. The data had been suppressed. The studies had been buried. Whistleblowers had been silenced. Julian had personally approved the cover-up. There were emails, memos, meeting transcripts. His signature was on documents authorizing the destruction of evidence. His voice was on recordings discussing how to manage the situation without alerting regulators. People had died, and Julian had decided that their lives were worth less than his company's stock price. "This is criminal," Vivian said, her hands shaking as she turned the pages. He could go to prison for this. If the right people see this evidence, Yes. Who has access to this? A few former employees who were pushed out when they raised concerns. One of them agreed to talk to me. She's been waiting for years for someone to take this seriously. Vivian sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She had been prepared to expose an affair, to humiliate Julian in front of the society that mattered so much to him. But this was something else entirely. This was justice. And suddenly, attending that wedding became about so much more than personal revenge. Now here's where this story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Because Vivienne didn't just plan to crash a wedding. She planned to bring down an empire. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed allies. People inside the Mercer world who could validate her evidence and help her execute her plan. And she knew exactly where to start. If you're as invested in Vivian's story as I am, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what happens next is going to blow your mind. I promise you, you don't want to miss it. Eleanor Mercer was 87 years old and still the most powerful person in her family. She controlled a fortune that stretched back 4 generations. She had survived 3 husbands, countless business rivals, and a family full of disappointing descendants. Her mind was sharp as a blade, her eyes missed nothing, and her word was law within the Mercer dynasty. She had also never approved of Julian's first marriage. Vivian discovered this when she reached out to request a private meeting. She expected to be refused. Instead, Eleanor's assistant called back within hours with an invitation to tea at the Mercer family estate. The house was everything Vivian had imagined and worse. Cold marble floors, portraits of ancestors staring down with disapproving eyes, the kind of inherited wealth that whispered rather than shouted, confident that everyone already knew exactly how much it was worth. Eleanor received her in a sitting room that probably cost more to furnish than Vivian's childhood home. The first wife, Eleanor said, studying Vivian with undisguised interest. I wondered when you would come to see me. You knew about me. Of course I knew. I know everything that happens in this family. Eleanor gestured to a chair. Please sit. Tea will be brought shortly. Why didn't you attend our wedding? Vivian asked. Julian said you were ill. Julian says many things. Eleanor's smile was thin. I didn't attend because I knew the marriage was a farce. My grandson needed to fulfill a condition of the trust, and you were his solution. I saw no reason to participate in the performance. Then why didn't you warn me? Would you have believed me? Vivian thought about herself 3 years ago, desperately in love, convinced she had found her soulmate, certain that the connection she felt with Julian was real. No, she admitted, I probably wouldn't have. Exactly. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. Tea arrived. Eleanor poured with the precise movements of someone who had been performing this ritual her entire life. So, Eleanor continued, why are you here now? If it's for sympathy, I'm afraid I'm not inclined to offer any. I'm not here for sympathy. Vivian opened her bag and pulled out a folder. I'm here to discuss your grandson's criminal activities. The next hour was one of the most intense conversations of Vivian's life. She laid out everything she had discovered. The pharmaceutical cover-up, the falsified data, the patients who had suffered and died, the documents with Julian's signature authorizing the concealment of evidence. Eleanor listened without interrupting. Her expression remained neutral, but Vivian saw the color drain from her face as the full scope of the situation became clear. When Vivian finished, Eleanor was silent for a long moment. I have always known Julian was capable of ruthlessness, she said finally. It is a trait that runs in this family. But this is beyond anything I imagined. He's going to marry Celeste Fontaine in less than a week, Vivian said. He's going to stand in front of 400 people and pretend to be a respectable man starting a new chapter. And I'm not going to let that happen. What are you proposing? I'm going to attend the wedding, and I'm going to expose him. The affair, the illegal marriage, the pharmaceutical scandal, all of it. That would destroy him. Yes, it would also damage the family name, the company, everything my husband and his father before him built. I know. Vivian met Eleanor's eyes steadily. But people have died because of what Julian did. More people will die if he's allowed to continue. I'm not asking for your permission to do this. I'm asking for your help. Why would I help you destroy my own grandson? Because you're the only person in this family who might actually care about the truth more than the name. Because you've spent your entire life building something you believed in, and Julian has corrupted it. And because... Vivian paused, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Because your great-grandchild deserves to be born into a family that values integrity over profit. Eleanor's eyes widened. You're pregnant. Yes. And I haven't told Julian, nor do I plan to tell him unless he becomes someone worthy of knowing his child. The old woman was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Vivienne with an intensity that felt almost physical. You have more steel in your spine than my entire family combined, Eleanor said finally. Very well. I will help you. They spent the next hour planning. Eleanor would attend the wedding as expected. She would say nothing to alert Julian or anyone else. But when Vivienne made her move, Eleanor would step in to legitimize the accusations. Her support would make it impossible for anyone to dismiss Vivienne as a scorned woman making baseless claims. There is something else you should know, Eleanor said as Vivienne prepared to leave. The Fontaine family is not what they appear to be. What do you mean? Laurent Fontaine has made several disastrous investments in recent years. The family is essentially bankrupt. This wedding isn't about love. It's about survival. Celeste is marrying Julian to save her family from financial ruin. So, everyone in this situation is using someone. Welcome to high society, my dear. Eleanor's smile was bitter. The only difference is that some of us are honest about it. Vivienne's second ally was Maya Chen. Maya was an investigative journalist who had been trying to get inside Mercer Pharmaceuticals for years. She had sources, suspicions, but never enough concrete evidence to publish. When Vivienne reached out through a mutual contact, Maya met her at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, as far from Julian's Manhattan world as possible. If what you're saying is true, Maya said, reviewing the documents Vivienne had brought, this is the biggest pharmaceutical scandal since Purdue. We're talking criminal charges, billions in fines, prison time for executives. It's true. I have corroborating witnesses, former employees who were pushed out when they tried to raise concerns. Maya looked up from the documents, her expression calculating. Why come to me? You could take this straight to the FDA, to the Department of Justice, because I want it to come out at the right time, in the right way. You want to humiliate him. I want justice. But yes, I also want him to face that justice in front of everyone who matters to him. I want him to watch his carefully constructed world collapse while 400 of his closest friends and family look on. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. I can work with that. When is the wedding? 6 days. Then we have work to do. The final piece of Vivienne's plan was the simplest and the most devastating. She called Julian's lawyer to discuss the divorce papers. Mrs. Mercer, the lawyer said with barely concealed impatience, we've been waiting for your signature for over a week. I understand. I've just had some questions about the terms. What questions? The settlement is extremely generous. Oh, I agree. It's very generous. I'm just trying to understand one thing. These papers reference our divorce proceedings, but I don't recall ever agreeing to file for divorce. There was a long pause. Mrs. Mercer, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean that Julian had these papers drawn up and sent to me without any discussion, without any negotiation, without my signature on any initial documents. Is that standard procedure? The lawyer's silence told her everything she needed to know. I'll need you to clarify the exact legal status of our marriage, Vivienne continued. Because as far as I can tell, Julian filed divorce papers, but I never signed them. Which means, legally speaking, we're still married. The wedding is in less than a week, the lawyer said, his voice tightening with barely concealed panic. If you're suggesting some kind of legal obstacle, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply asking you to confirm the facts. Are we divorced or aren't we? Another long pause. Technically, until you sign the papers, the divorce is not finalized. Thank you. That's all I needed to know. She hung up before he could respond. The trap was set. All the pieces were in place. Eleanor would support her from the inside. Maya would break the pharmaceutical story at the perfect moment. And the legal technicality of her still valid marriage would make the wedding itself impossible to complete. Julian thought he was about to start his real life. The life he had been planning all along. He had no idea that his real life was about to come crashing down around him. The day of the wedding arrived wrapped in perfect weather. Blue skies, gentle breeze. The kind of day that wedding planners dream of and rarely receive. The Fontaine estate in the Hamptons was transformed into a paradise of white roses and cascading wisteria. 400 gilded chairs arranged in perfect rows. An aisle that seemed to stretch toward the horizon itself. String quartet warming up with pachelbel. Vivian watched the preparations from her car, parked at a safe distance with a clear view of arriving guests. She was ready. The burgundy gown she'd chosen was perfect, a color that signified defiance in Victorian tradition, a bloodstain against all that pristine white. Her evidence was distributed, copies sent to the FDA, the SEC, 3 major news outlets, all timed to release within hours of the wedding, regardless of what happened. Her legal team was on standby, ready to confirm her still valid marriage the moment anyone challenged her claims. And her baby, Julian's baby, was safely hidden inside her, a secret that would be revealed at exactly the right moment for maximum impact. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, naive, trusting, so desperate to believe in love that she had ignored every warning sign. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder, stronger, more dangerous. She thought about what she was about to do, the lives she was about to destroy. Julian's life, Celeste's life, the Fontaine family, the Mercer legacy. Was this justice? Or was it revenge? Maybe it was both. Maybe it didn't matter. She placed her hand on her stomach. "I'm doing this for us," she whispered, "so you never have to live in a world built on lies." She stepped out of the car, adjusted her burgundy gown, and began walking toward the gate. It was time. The security at the Fontaine estate was focused on keeping out paparazzi and uninvited photographers. They were not expecting a well-dressed woman in an expensive gown to be a threat. Vivian walked through the gate with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She nodded politely at the security guard, who barely glanced at her invitation. The invitation she had received by accident, the one that had unraveled her entire life. The irony was not lost on her. She made her way through the gardens, past clusters of guests sipping champagne and exchanging air kisses. She recognized some faces from society pages and Julian's work events. People she had met at charity galas and dinner parties during her years as Mrs. Mercer. None of them recognized her. Julian had kept her carefully separated from his real social circle. She had attended events, yes, but always on the periphery, always introduced vaguely, never photographed for the society pages, never included in the inner circle that was now gathered to celebrate his wedding to Celeste. She had been invisible then. She would use that invisibility now. Vivian found a seat in the back row, partially hidden behind a large arrangement of white roses. From here, she could see the altar clearly. She could see the guests settling into their gilded chairs. She could see the string quartet preparing for the processional. And she could see Julian. He stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking every inch the handsome prince from a fairy tale. His dark hair was immaculately styled. His posture radiated confidence. He smiled and nodded at guests, the picture of a man about to marry the love of his life. Vivian studied his face, searching for any sign of the man she had once loved. The man who had held her on their wedding night and whispered that she was real. The man who had looked into her eyes and promised forever. She saw nothing, just a mask, a performance, the same performance he had been giving for their entire relationship. She wondered if he ever thought about her, if he felt any guilt about what he had done, if he had lost even a single night of sleep over the woman he had used and discarded. Probably not. Men like Julian didn't waste energy on regret. They moved forward. They got what they wanted. And they never looked back. Well, today he would be forced to look back. The ceremony began at exactly 6 o'clock as the sun started its descent toward the ocean. The string quartet launched into Pachelbel's cannon. Guests turned in their seats toward the back of the garden. Cameras were raised. Handkerchiefs were prepared for tears of joy. And Celeste Fontaine appeared at the end of the aisle. She was beautiful in the cold, porcelain way of women who have never known a day of real struggle. Her gown was a cloud of white silk and French lace that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. Her champagne blonde hair was swept up in an elaborate style that must have taken hours to achieve. She looked like a princess. She looked like everything Julian had always wanted. Her father walked beside her, beaming with the relief of a man whose debts were about to disappear. Her mother sat in the front row, dabbing at carefully staged tears. The guests sighed collectively at the picture-perfect scene. Vivian watched Julian's face as Celeste approached. Did he love her? Did he feel anything real for this woman he was about to marry? Or was she just another strategic choice, another piece in the game he was always playing? His expression was pleasant, controlled, appropriately emotional but never too much. The same expression he had worn at their wedding 3 years ago. Maybe that was his only expression for occasions like this. Maybe he didn't have anything genuine left to give. Celeste reached the altar and handed her bouquet to a bridesmaid. Julian took her hands in his. They gazed at each other with what was supposed to be love, but looked more like mutual satisfaction at a successful business arrangement. The officiant began speaking. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Celeste Elaine Fontaine and Julian Marcus Mercer in holy matrimony." Holy matrimony. The words made Vivian want to laugh. There was nothing holy about what was happening here. Just two families merging their assets while pretending it was romance. "Marriage is a sacred bond," the officiant continued. "A commitment made before God and witnesses to love, honor, and cherish one another for all the days of your lives." Vivian had heard these words before. She had believed them once. She had stood at an altar and made these promises to the man now standing 20 feet away, preparing to make them to someone else. Julian and Celeste exchanged personalized vows. His were eloquent and polished, probably written by a professional speechwriter. He spoke of partnership and legacy and building a future together. He mentioned nothing about love, nothing about the connection between two souls, nothing that couldn't have been said at a corporate merger announcement. Hers were more emotional, theatrical in a way designed to impress the crowd. She spoke of knowing from the moment they met that they were destined for each other. She spoke of waiting for him, of dreaming of this day, of the life they would build together. Vivian wondered how much of it Celeste actually believed. Did she know about the first wife who was still legally married to her groom? Did she know about the pharmaceutical scandal that was about to destroy his empire? Did she know anything real about the man she was binding herself to? Or was she just as willing to live in illusion as Julian was to create them? The ceremony moved forward with practiced precision. Readings from classic literature, a solo performance by an opera singer, the exchange of rings that probably cost enough to fund a small hospital. And then the officiant reached the moment Vivian had been waiting for. "If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be lawfully married, speak now or forever hold your peace." The pause stretched out. A traditional formality, a moment of theater that no one actually expected to be disrupted. Someone in the crowd coughed. A few guests exchanged amused glances. The officiant was already opening his mouth to continue, and Vivian stood up. The movement caught the attention of the guests nearest to her first. Heads turned. Whispers started. The ripple of disruption spread through the crowd like a wave until every single person in that garden was staring at the woman in burgundy who had risen from the back row. Julian's face went white. His mouth opened but no sound came out. For the first time in her memory, he looked completely at a loss. Celeste's expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, and then pure, undiluted fury. "I object," Vivian said. Her voice carried clearly across the garden, cutting through the whispers and gasps like a blade. She had practiced this. She had made sure her voice would not shake, would not falter, would not betray any of the chaos churning beneath her composed exterior. "I object on the grounds that the groom is already legally married." The gasps were immediate, explosive. Hands flew to mouths. Guests turned to each other with expressions of shock and disbelief. Julian found his voice. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" She began walking up the aisle, slowly, deliberately, her burgundy dress cutting through the sea of white like blood spreading through water. "I'm attending my husband's wedding," she said. "Isn't that what wives do? This is insane." Celeste's voice was shrill. "Julian, who is this woman?" "This," Julian said, his voice strangled, "is she's your wife." Vivienne finished for him. "The one you forgot to divorce." She reached the front of the assembly and stopped a few feet from the altar facing the crowd. 400 faces stared back at her. Shock, curiosity, the hungry anticipation of people who sense they are about to witness something scandalous. "My name is Vivian Ashford Mercer," she announced. "I married Julian Mercer 3 years ago. We have never been divorced. The papers he filed were never signed by me. They were never processed. They were never finalized, which means this wedding cannot legally proceed." The crowd erupted. Guests were on their feet, craning to see, pulling out phones, whispering urgently to each other. Security guards started moving toward the front but seemed unsure what to do. "This is ridiculous." Julian's composure was cracking visibly. "We're divorced. The paperwork was handled. Was it? Vivian turned to face him directly. Because according to my lawyers, and according to yours if you bother to check, a divorce requires both parties to sign the final documents. I never signed anything. Julian's eyes darted to his attorney sitting in the front row. The man's face had gone the color of old paper. He gave a tiny, helpless shake of his head. You said she signed. Julian's voice was rising. You told me it was finalized. You said she would sign, the attorney shot back. You said she was cooperative and it was just a formality. I never agreed to a divorce, Vivian said calmly. Julian sent papers to my apartment and assumed I would comply. He didn't bother to follow up. He didn't bother to make sure, because to him, I was never a person, just a problem to be managed. Celeste stepped forward, her beautiful face contorted with rage. This is absurd. You can't just walk in here and ruin our wedding with some technicality. It's not a technicality. It's the law. Vivian met Celeste's glare without flinching. You can't marry a man who's already married. That's called bigamy. It's a crime. Julian, do something. Celeste grabbed his arm. Make her stop. Make her leave. But Julian seemed frozen. The master manipulator, the man who always had an angle, was standing in front of 400 people with his carefully constructed life crumbling around him. I don't know how, he started. You don't know how to fix this. Vivian's voice was ice. That's because some things can't be fixed, Julian. Some lies are too big to talk your way out of. Laurent Fontaine pushed his way forward from the front row. His face was purple with fury. I don't know who you are, he spat at Vivian, but I will have you arrested for this, for trespassing, for harassment, for ruining my daughter's wedding. Go ahead and call the police, Vivian replied calmly. They'll be very interested in what I have to tell them. Which brings me to the other reason I'm here. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a USB drive, holding it up so everyone could see. The room fell silent. This, Vivian said, contains evidence of criminal activity by Mercer Pharmaceuticals. Specifically, evidence that the company has been covering up dangerous side effects of their flagship blood pressure medication for over a year. She paused, letting the words sink in. Strokes, seizures, deaths, all suppressed to protect the company's stock price. All authorized by Julian Mercer personally. That's a lie. Julian's voice was strangled. That's slander. You have no proof. I have internal memos. Vivian's voice didn't waver. I have emails. I have testimony from former employees who were pushed out when they tried to raise concerns. I have documents with your signature authorizing the destruction of evidence. She turned to face the crowd again. Julian Mercer isn't just a cheating husband. He's a criminal. And by tomorrow morning, the whole world will know it. She's lying. Celeste was crying now, mascara running down her face. Julian, tell them she's lying. But Julian wasn't saying anything. He was staring at Vivian with an expression she had never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Copies of this evidence have already been sent to the FDA, Vivian continued, to the Securities and Exchange Commission, to 3 major news outlets. The story breaks tomorrow, whether I'm here or not. I just wanted to make sure Julian heard about it first, in front of everyone who matters to him. From the front row, a woman rose slowly to her feet. Eleanor Mercer was frail but formidable. Her white hair was perfectly styled. Her posture was straight as a rod, and her voice when she spoke cut through the chaos like a knife. Enough. Even Julian fell silent. Even the murmuring crowd stilled. Eleanor Mercer had that effect on people. She had commanded this family for decades, and that authority had not diminished with age. She walked slowly toward the altar, each step deliberate and measured. When she reached Vivian's side, she stopped and surveyed the crowd with the expression of a queen addressing her subjects. I have reviewed the evidence this woman speaks of, Eleanor announced. I have had it verified by independent experts. It is authentic. She turned to face her grandson. Julian, you are stripped of your position as CEO of Mercer Pharmaceuticals, effective immediately. The board will convene an emergency meeting tomorrow to address the criminal matter. You will cooperate fully with all investigations that follow. Grandmother, Julian's voice cracked. You can't do this. I can, and I have. Eleanor's voice was cold as winter. You have brought shame on this family, on the legacy your grandfather and great-grandfather built. You have betrayed every value we claim to stand for. I was protecting the company. You were protecting yourself. You were protecting your stock options and your bonus and your precious reputation, and you sacrificed innocent lives to do it. The crowd was absolutely silent now. No one moved. No one spoke. They were witnessing the destruction of one of the most powerful men in their social circle, and no one wanted to miss a moment. Grandmother, please, let me explain. There is nothing to explain. I have read the documents. I have seen the emails. I know exactly what you did and why you did it. Eleanor's voice was heavy with disappointment. I always knew you were capable of ruthlessness. It is a trait that runs in this family, but I believe you understood the difference between ruthlessness in business and criminal negligence. I was wrong. She turned to face Celeste, who was still crying at the altar. As for you, my dear, I suspect you knew exactly what you were getting into when you agreed to marry a man who was already bound to another woman. Celeste's tears stopped abruptly. In their place was naked fury. I didn't know anything about this. She spat. Julian told me his first marriage was annulled. He told me she was nobody. Nobody. Vivian felt the word land like a slap. That's what I've been to all of you. Nobody. Eleanor placed a hand on Vivian's shoulder, a gesture of support that surprised everyone, including Vivian herself. This woman is not nobody, Eleanor said firmly. She is the mother of my great-grandchild, and she has shown more courage and integrity in the past 10 minutes than this family has demonstrated in a decade. The revelation hit the crowd like a bomb. You're pregnant. Julian's face went gray. With my child. Yes. Vivian met his eyes steadily. And this child will never know you as its father, not unless you become someone worthy of that role. You can't keep my child from me. Watch me. This is my heir. My legacy. Your legacy. Vivian's laugh was bitter. You threw me away because you said I couldn't give you children. You called me barren. You called me defective. You married me knowing you were going to discard me the moment your grandmother's inheritance came through. And now you want to talk about legacy. Julian had no response. The man who always had an answer, always had an angle, always had a way to spin the situation in his favor, stood silent. I loved you, Vivian said quietly. I loved you more than I have ever loved anyone. I believed every word you said, every promise you made. I built my entire life around you, Vivian. No, you don't get to say my name like that. You don't get to pretend you have any feelings left for me. You made your choice 3 years ago when you decided I was just a means to an end. You made it again when you started planning your real wedding while I was carrying your child. She took a step back from the altar. I'm done here, she said. I've said what I came to say. The authorities have the evidence. The media has the story. Whatever happens next is out of my hands. She turned and began walking back down the aisle, her burgundy dress trailing behind her like a queen's robe. You'll regret this. Julian's voice followed her. I'll destroy you. I'll take everything you have. I'll take that child. Vivian stopped. She turned back to face him one last time. You already took everything I had, Julian. My love, my trust, my belief in happily ever after. You can't take anything else because there's nothing left. She smiled, and it was the coldest expression she had ever worn. But here's the thing you never understood about me. I wasn't nothing before I met you. I was a scholarship student who clawed her way into Columbia. I was a woman who built herself from scratch without a trust fund or a famous last name. I survived poverty and struggle and years of working twice as hard for half the recognition. And I will survive you. She walked out of the garden without looking back. Behind her, the chaos continued. Guests were on their feet, shouting questions, pulling out phones. Security was trying to contain the situation and failing miserably. Celeste was screaming at Julian. Laurent Fontaine was having what appeared to be a panic attack. And Eleanor Mercer stood at the altar like a statue, watching the destruction of everything her family had built. But Vivian didn't see any of it. She was already gone. The drive back to Manhattan took 3 hours. Vivian spent most of it in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed almost mocking in their beauty. Her phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls, text messages, emails from reporters who had somehow already gotten her number. She ignored all of it. When she finally reached her apartment, she walked straight to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked the same. That was the strangest part. She had just destroyed a man's entire life, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and announced a pregnancy to a crowd of 400 strangers. But she looked exactly like she had that morning. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the biggest changes happened inside, where no one could see them. She placed her hand on her stomach. "We did it," she whispered. And then, finally, she let herself cry. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Every major news outlet, every social media platform, every gossip website and business publication and cable news show. The scandal had everything the media loved: wealth, power, betrayal, crime, and a sympathetic victim who had risen from the ashes to bring down her tormentor. Billionaire CEO's double life exposed at wedding. Mercer Pharmaceuticals covered up drug deaths. Scorned wife crashes wedding, reveals criminal conspiracy. The FBI moved fast. By noon, agents were at Mercer Pharmaceuticals headquarters with search warrants. By evening, Julian's assets were frozen pending investigation. By the end of the week, he was arrested and charged with securities fraud, conspiracy to defraud the public, and obstruction of justice. The trial came 8 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Internal documents, email chains, testimony from former employees who had been waiting years for someone to take their concerns seriously, medical records of patients who had suffered strokes and seizures, death certificates of those who hadn't survived. Julian's lawyers tried everything. They argued that he had been following advice from regulatory consultants, that he hadn't personally ordered the cover-up, that the data was inconclusive and didn't warrant the drastic action of a recall. The jury didn't buy any of it. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was 18 months in federal prison, reduced from the potential maximum due to his lack of prior criminal record and his cooperation with the ongoing investigation. Mercer Pharmaceuticals was ordered to pay $2.3 billion in settlements to affected patients and their families. Vivian watched the verdict from the back of the courtroom. She didn't feel the satisfaction she had expected, just exhaustion, and a strange hollow relief that it was finally over. Julian was led out in handcuffs. As he passed her row, he stopped. The guards tried to move him along, but he resisted. "I'm sorry," he said. It was the first time he had ever apologized to her. In 3 years of marriage and months of legal proceedings, he had never once said those words. Vivian looked at this man who had once been her whole world. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The arrogance and confidence that had defined him were gone, replaced by something that almost looked like genuine remorse. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The guards led him away, and Vivian walked out of the courthouse into a crowd of reporters and cameras. She pushed through them without comment and got into a waiting car. It was time to start building her new life. Now here's where the story takes its final turn. Because Vivian's journey didn't end with Julian's conviction. It was only beginning. What she built in the years that followed was more than she ever imagined. And the question of whether redemption was possible for her and for Julian would haunt her for years to come. If you're still with me, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now if you haven't already, because this ending is going to stay with you. I promise. Vivian's son was born on a spring morning, 6 months after Julian's conviction. She named him Marcus Julian Ashford. The middle name was deliberate, not to honor his father, but to remind herself of what she had overcome. Every time she said it, she would remember her own strength, her own survival. He was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, dark hair like his father, amber eyes like her. A stubborn chin that could have come from either of them. Her parents flew in from Providence to be there. Her mother cried. Her father held his grandson with trembling hands and whispered promises about all the things he would teach him. This, Vivian thought, was what family was supposed to look like. Not strategy and legacy and producing heirs. Just love. Simple, unconditional love. She moved back to Providence 3 months later. Manhattan held too many memories, too many ghosts. Every street corner reminded her of something from her life with Julian. Every restaurant was somewhere they had eaten together. Every park was somewhere they had walked. Providence was different. Providence was home. She found a Victorian townhouse on Benefit Street, close to the university where she had been offered a teaching position. Close to her parents, who doted on Marcus with the kind of joyful abandon that grandparents were famous for. The house had a garden where Marcus learned to walk, a porch where she sat in the evenings, grading papers and watching the sun set, a kitchen where she cooked dinners that were nothing like the catered meals of her Mercer days but somehow tasted better. She didn't need the settlement money, but she took it anyway. Some of it went into a trust for Marcus. Some of it went into a foundation she created for pharmaceutical safety advocacy, using Julian's crimes as a cautionary tale to prevent similar tragedies. Some of it went into her own education, finishing the MBA she had abandoned when Julian convinced her to become a society wife. She started teaching business ethics at Brown University. There was something deeply satisfying about standing in front of classrooms full of ambitious young students and teaching them about the importance of integrity, about the difference between success and exploitation, about the long-term costs of short-term thinking. She told them her story sometimes, not the dramatic details, just the lesson. "I married a man who believed that rules didn't apply to him," she would say. "He thought he could manipulate systems and people without consequences. He was wrong. There are always consequences. Sometimes they just take a while to arrive." The students would nod seriously, taking notes they probably wouldn't look at again. But some of them would remember. Some of them would think twice before taking an ethical shortcut. And that was enough. At 34, Vivian looked in the mirror and saw someone she barely recognized. Not because she looked different, but because she felt different. The woman who had married Julian Mercer was gone forever. That woman had believed in fairy tales, had trusted too easily, had built her identity around someone else's opinion of her worth. This woman was complete on her own. She didn't need anyone to validate her. She had proven her strength to herself, and that was the only proof that mattered. Single motherhood was exhausting. There were nights when Marcus wouldn't sleep, when she was running on 3 hours of rest and still had to teach a morning class. There were moments when she missed having a partner, someone to share the burden, someone to celebrate the small victories. But she wouldn't trade this authentic struggle for the gilded cage she had escaped. Not for anything. The letters started arriving a year after Julian's release from prison. He served 14 months of his 18-month sentence, released early for good behavior. Vivian heard about it from her lawyer, who assured her that a restraining order was in place and Julian couldn't come anywhere near her or Marcus. But letters were harder to prevent. The first one was angry, defensive, full of accusations and demands. "You ruined my life. You destroyed my company. You turned my own family against me. I have every right to know my son. I have every right to be part of his life. You can't keep him from me forever. I will fight you in every court in this country if I have to." Vivian threw it away without responding. The second letter came a week later. Still angry, but less certain. "I know you have reasons to hate me. I know I hurt you. But Marcus is innocent. He deserves to know his father. He deserves to understand where he comes from. Please don't punish him for my mistakes." She threw that one away too. The letters kept coming. Every week, sometimes twice a week. Gradually, they changed. The anger faded. In its place was something that almost sounded like self-reflection. "I've been going to therapy. I know that probably sounds like a joke to you." The great Julian Mercer, talking about his feelings to a stranger. "But I'm trying to understand why I became the person I became, why I hurt the people I hurt, why I thought money and status were more important than love." Vivian read that one twice before throwing it away. More letters followed. "I think about you every day, not in the possessive way I used to, not as something I owned or controlled. I think about the woman I met at that networking event, the one who made me feel real for the first time in my life. I destroyed that. I destroyed us. And I don't know if I can ever make it right, but I want to try." She didn't throw that one away. She tucked it into a drawer, unsure why she was keeping it. "I've started a nonprofit. I know that sounds self-serving, like I'm just trying to rehabilitate my image, but I'm using my knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry to advocate for transparency, to prevent what happened at Mercer from happening somewhere else. I'm trying to turn the worst thing I ever did into something that might actually help people." Another letter for the drawer. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I want you to know that I understand now what I threw away. Not the money or the status. Those meant nothing in the end. I threw away the only real love I've ever known. I threw away the chance to be part of something genuine, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." The letters kept coming, every week. For 2 years, Vivian read them all now. She didn't respond, but she read them. She watched Julian from a distance through news articles and mutual acquaintances. He had indeed started a nonprofit focused on pharmaceutical transparency. He was speaking at conferences about corporate ethics, using his own failures as a warning to other executives. He lived simply now in a small apartment far from the Manhattan penthouse where they had once lived together. He was not the same man she had married. That much was clear. But did that mean he had changed? Really changed? Or was this just another performance, another angle, another mask he was wearing to get what he wanted? She didn't know. She wasn't sure she would ever know. Marcus was 3 years old when her mother brought up the subject. He asks about his father, her mother said one evening after Marcus was asleep. He sees other children with daddies at the park. He wants to know where his is. I know. Vivian stared into her coffee cup. I've been trying to figure out how to explain it. What are you going to tell him? The truth. Eventually, when he's old enough to understand. And what is the truth, Vivian? She thought for a long moment. The truth is that his father made terrible mistakes, that he hurt people, including me, that he's been trying to become someone better, but I don't know if he's succeeded, and that I don't know if I can ever trust him enough to let him be part of Marcus's life. Her mother was quiet for a moment. He writes to you still. The letters keep coming. Yes. Do you read them? Yes. And what do they say? That he's changed. That he's sorry. That he loves me. That he wants to know his son. Do you believe him? Vivian closed her eyes. Sometimes, she admitted, some of the things he writes, they sound genuine. They sound like the man I thought I was marrying before I realized he didn't exist. Maybe that man did exist, her mother said gently. Maybe he was just buried under all the expectations and pressure and fear. Maybe your husband wasn't entirely a lie. Or maybe I just want to believe that because it makes my own choices seem less foolish. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. There's no shame in wanting to believe in people, Vivian. That's not foolishness. That's hope. The question is whether hope is enough to build a future on. I don't know, Vivian whispered. I really don't know. The question haunted her for months. She thought about it while watching Marcus play in the garden, chasing butterflies with the single-minded determination of a toddler. She thought about it while teaching her classes, discussing case studies about second chances and corporate redemption. She thought about it while lying awake at night, replaying memories from her marriage and trying to separate the lies from the truth. Did people really change? Could the man who had used her so completely, who had built their entire marriage on a calculated deception, become someone worthy of trust and love? The woman he had hurt so badly was still part of her. That wound would never fully heal. But so was the woman who had loved him once. The woman who had seen something real behind the masks he wore. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it wasn't about pretending the past didn't happen. Maybe it was about refusing to be defined by someone else's worst moments. Maybe it was about freedom. One afternoon, when Marcus was 3.5, she found him sitting in the garden with a serious expression on his face. "Mama," he said, "why don't I have a daddy?" Vivian felt her heart crack open. She sat down beside him on the grass and took his small hand in hers. "You do have a daddy," she said carefully. "He just doesn't live with us." "Why not?" "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big mistakes that hurt people. And when that happens, they need time to learn how to be better." "Did my daddy make a mistake?" "Yes, sweetheart. He did." "Did he hurt you?" Vivian hesitated. She had always promised herself she would be honest with her son. But how do you explain betrayal to a 3-year-old? "Yes," she said finally. "He hurt me. Not on purpose exactly, but he made choices that hurt me very much." "Is he sorry?" She thought about the letters in her drawer. Dozens of them now, all expressing regret and hope and a desperate desire for redemption. "Yes," she said. "I think he is." "Then why can't he come see me?" "Because," Vivian said slowly, "being sorry isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to prove that you've changed. You have to show people through your actions, not just your words, and that takes time." "How much time?" "I don't know, baby. As much time as it takes." Marcus considered this with the profound seriousness of childhood. "Okay," he said finally, "but when he proves it, can he come play with me?" Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes. "Maybe," she whispered. "We'll see." That night, after Marcus was asleep, Vivian sat at her desk and did something she had never done before. She wrote back, "Julian." The letter was short, a few sentences. "I've received your letters. I've read them. I'm not ready to forgive you. I may never be ready, but I'm willing to consider the possibility that you've changed. If you want to be part of Marcus's life, you'll have to prove it. Not to me, to yourself. Keep doing the work. Keep becoming someone worth knowing, and maybe, someday, We can have a conversation about what comes next. Vivian. She mailed the letter before she could change her mind. The response came a week later. Thank you. Just those 2 words. And then, below them, I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve this chance. Julian. Vivian put the letter in the drawer with all the others. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if Julian had truly changed or if his letters were just another sophisticated manipulation. She didn't know if she could ever trust him again, ever open her heart to the man who had shattered it so completely. But she knew this. She was no longer the naive woman who had walked down the aisle believing in fairy tales. She was stronger now, wiser, more complete in herself than she had ever been while standing in someone else's shadow. Whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms, with her head held high, with her heart open to possibility but protected by hard-won wisdom. She walked to the window and watched her son sleeping in his bed, his small chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. This is what matters, she thought. This small life, this chance to build something real, this opportunity to show him that strength and kindness can exist together, that you can survive betrayal without becoming bitter, that you can protect yourself without closing off your heart entirely. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, devastated, broken, certain that her life was over, and she thought about the woman she was now, teaching, writing, raising a son who amazed her every single day, building a life that was completely her own. Sometimes she realized the greatest gift our enemies give us is the chance to discover who we really are without them. Julian Mercer had tried to destroy her. He had used her and discarded her and left her to pick up the pieces of a life she hadn't known was built on sand. But in doing so, he had set her free, free from the illusion of a perfect marriage, free from the expectations of a society that had never accepted her, free from the need to be validated by anyone other than herself. She didn't know if she would ever let Julian back into her life. She didn't know if she would ever be able to look at him without remembering the pain he had caused. But she knew she would survive either way, because she was Vivian Ashford, a woman who had clawed her way up from nothing once and would do it again if she had to, a woman who had faced her worst nightmare and emerged stronger on the other side, a woman who had learned that the only fairy tale worth believing in was the one she wrote for herself, and that was enough. The sun rose over Providence, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. In a Victorian townhouse on Benefit Street, a woman stood at a window and watched the world wake up. Behind her, her son slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams 3-year-olds dream. Ahead of her lay a future she couldn't predict, a future that might include forgiveness, or might not, a future that might hold second chances, or might be built entirely on new beginnings. Either way, it was hers. And that, perhaps, was the only ending that really mattered. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do 3 things for me right now. First, hit that like button so hard the algorithm feels it. Second, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we have so many more incredible stories coming your way. And third, this is the most important one, share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Leave me a comment telling me what you would do in Vivian's position. Would you give Julian a second chance? Would you let him meet his son? Would you find it in your heart to forgive? Or would some betrayals be too deep to ever truly heal? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Until next time, remember this: your story isn't over until you decide it's over, and the best chapters might still be ahead. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to be destroyed by those who try to break us. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming the person we were always meant to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the story doesn't end with the wedding crash or the prison sentence or the final confrontation. It ends with a woman at a window, watching the sunrise, knowing that whatever comes next, she is ready.